Bishop, we are kicking off a new topic today. Wonderful to see you in live video, sir. How are you this extremely hot afternoon here in New York City?
Well, Brother Jason, it is such a great honor to be back as a part of this great team here in New York City, the Crowdsource, the Truth family, and it is a hot one today. So hopefully we can cool things down through this brand new series on this afternoon.
You know, Bishop, I think as I've gotten to know you, cooling things down is not likely to be what you're about to do. But, you know, it is important before we begin, I do like to let everyone know that they can stay abreast of what the Bishop is doing and broadcasting, even when he's not on Crowdsource the Truth, by going to liferadionj.com/Gators. You can listen to Bishop Gator's syndicated radio show. If you're in the New York and New Jersey area, tune into 92.9 FM. It's also important for viewers of the show who enjoy listening to and hearing the Bishop's insights to become sponsors. You can join the global spiritual revolution by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and making a financial contribution. You can also support Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/Crowdsource the Truth or patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. And if you're not yet a subscriber of Bishop Gator's YouTube channel, please get onto YouTube and check out Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group. Let's help push the Bishop to 40,000 YouTube subscribers. The channel's been growing. The message has been growing. Bishop, what have you prepared for us today as we explore Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm?
I am so excited about this new short series concerning Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, in the Prince Hall paradigm. In order for us to understand why Kanye West said what he said over a week and a half ago in North Charleston, South Carolina, which is the same geographical location where Harriet Tubman, back in June of 1863, with the backing of the Northern Military Industrial Complex, marched into North Charleston and had freed a lot of former slaves. So then, to understand what's going on today in the foreground, let's go back into history in this historical background, beginning with a woman by the name of Harriet Tubman. Her real name, Jason, was Araminta Ross. So this woman, Harriet Tubman, was born on March 22nd, then in the year of 1822, and she died during the month of 1913. So then, born in March of 1822, and passed away during the month of March in 1913. So she led a raid in North Charleston, South Carolina, during the month and year of June of 1863. So what Kanye West is going through now, and Dave Chappelle is going through now, it is nothing new, because going back into the transatlantic slave trade, okay, here in the United States and around the world, but more specifically here in the southern section of what we call the Dixie South. Most of the slaves who were enslaved were labeled to be unstable, and especially those who wanted freedom. They did not want to stay on any type of plantation. So the slave master had taught the slaves, Jason, that if any man, woman, or child would want to leave the plantation, that man, woman, or child was to be labeled unstable. So then this is the reason why the psychic of Black America, not all, Jason, but a certain percentage has not broken away from that psyop of enslavement that we're going to reveal here today. Now, I'm a Black conservative. I don't teach victimhood. But in order for your audience and your listeners, Jason, all over the world to properly understand why Kanye West said what he said, Kanye West has not lost his mind. Kanye West is not unstable. Kanye West is not suffering from any type of psychological disorder or disease or syndrome. So then Kanye West had said that Harriet Tubman did not actually free the slaves, but he went on to say that Harriet Tubman had sold the slaves, more specifically to the North. That part he did not say. But then Kanye West, in its entirety of his speech, was telling the truth, Jason. As we're breaking down this schematical, historical timeline of what we call Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm.
Now, Bishop,
So
real
to
quickly,
understand the structure of the Democratic Party, what we call the Democratic Party, we have to look at the life of Harriet Tubman. Because Jason, again, she was born in 1822 during the month of March and died in 1913 during the month of March. Now, the Underground Railroad system throughout the South, going up to the North, okay, especially the northeastern section of the United States, okay, going into Canada, Nova Scotia, was built with Rothschild money through the North. And so, in other words, according to the book, 12 Years a Slave in Harriet, the Moses of her people, okay, by concerning the life of Solomon Northrop, okay. In that powerful book by Sarah Bradford, she had said that Harriet Tubman was taught how to properly understand the routes, Jason, concerning the underground network. How did she know where to go and to whom to see? Because she was taught by abolitionists like Albert Pike, like John Brown, like Rob Morris, okay, who went on to create the Eastern Stars, okay, and including a man by the name of Levi Coffin. So these were abolitionists who had chosen not a Black man, but a Black woman to free anywhere from 70 to 300 slaves, not because for the sake of liberating them, but she was instructed by Ulysses S. Grant in the Northern military structure, okay, in preparation for the incoming onslaught of what you and I called the Civil War. So 70% of the slaves who were liberated by Harriet Tubman were engineers, Jason, were land surveyors, were brick masons, also men and women
but
who
Bishop, sorry,
understood the art of war. Go right ahead, Jason.
how did those slaves learn those trades? I thought slaves weren't even allowed to read.
Slaves, when you look at the psychic of, I don't like to call them the African people, but the psychic of the people from the land called Alkebulan. The history of engineering in this world, on this planet, the history of the sciences and the arts, okay, what we call blueprint or the ability to read schematical blueprints and engineering came up out of Egypt, going back thousands of years ago, Jason. So medicine came up out of Egypt, okay? Dentistry came up out of Egypt, okay? The ability to be an engineer, okay, came up out of Egypt. So then, yes, many of the slaves could not read and write, but they learned that trade coming from Africa or Alkebulan, okay? Because you have to understand, Jason, that most of the engineers during the 430 years of enslavement here in the West were Black men and women. White people did not build the plantation. White people did not build the White House in Washington, D.C. White people did not build the Capitol or the Lincoln Monument or the Jefferson Memorial. Even there was a 33rd degree Black Prince Hall Mason, a man by the name of Dr. Benjamin Banneker, whose name has been whitewashed in history. He's the one, Jason, in 1791, Dr. Benjamin Banneker, who was instructed by George Washington to build the present day Washington, D.C., of what you and I call the District of Columbia. That, our capital, Jason, was built by a Black man, a 33rd degree Prince Hall Mason, Dr. Benjamin Banneker. So then, to answer the premise of your question, since slaves were not allowed to read and write, how did they have the knowledge how to build schematically buildings and plantations and homes, including the capital of the United States of America? They brought that knowledge, Jason, over from Africa, because the motherland called Alkebulan, it is the motherland that started all science, all mathematics, all medicine and dentistry, including engineering. Okay? White folk did not build the South. Black people did that in order for us to understand properly Harriet Tubman in this incoming paradigm of what you and I would deem it as a Prince Hall paradigm. Now, according to the book entitled Freemasons by Jasper Wrigley, the Freemasons, a history of the world's most powerful secret societies, okay? He says that Harriet Tubman, her bloodline through her first husband, John Tubman, both Harriet Tubman and John Tubman were Prince Hall Masons, and they were also members of the Eastern Star, okay? Now, what is the premise of what we call the Prince Hall Masonic Order? Jason, that Masonic order, which was a precursor to the Black Skulls and Bones, or what you and I call the Boule Secret Society, later would be birthed in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the hometown of Kobe Bryant. So then, Prince Hall was born in Barbados in the year of 1738. Jason, he was the son of a white British slave owner, Thomas Prince Hall, who had brutally raped one of his female slaves in Bridgetown, Barbados, okay, in 1737. 9 months later, a young boy was born, Prince Hall. So then his father, a slave owner, Thomas Prince Hall, represented the financial interests of the Rothschilds, not only in Barbados, but throughout the Caribbean islands. So then the Prince Hall Masonic Order was named after the man, Prince Hall, who later immigrated to Boston, Massachusetts, and then eventually settled in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the hometown of Kobe Bean Bryant, the hometown of the Boulay Secret Society, which has now become the headquarters of the Prince Hall, okay, Masonic Order, okay? So then Prince Hall created this order, Jason, because Black people were prohibited of joining any Masonic or free Masonic secret society. So then, according to Dr. Jasper Ridley, Freemasons, a history of the world's most powerful secret societies, he says that Prince Hall traveled to Great Britain along with 15 other former African slaves, which made up the number 16. Oh, so 16 Black men with Prince Hall taking the lead went to Great Britain to seek the permission from the British arm of the Rothschilds, according to Dr. Jasper Ridley, Freemasons, a history of the world's most powerful secret societies. So 16 Black men with Prince Hall in the lead in 1774 sought permission from the Khazarian Mafia in Great Britain, the Rothschild dynasty, the British arm of the Rothschild dynasty. As we're schematically breaking down Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. Why is that number 16 so important, Jason? Because in the West African religion that you and I talked about before, the Odu Ifa religion has 16 points, 16 stages of what we call demonic connection and possession, which a lot of African Americans today absolutely love connecting to their ancestors. So that term ancestor comes from a root term, incestor, or incest, ancestral, or where we get the root term assist. So the word of God says, my people destroyed for the lack of knowledge, as we're breaking down Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, in the Prince Hall paradigm. So 16 men with Prince Hall created the Prince Hall Masonic Order. There's 16 points within the demonic religion of witchcraft called Odu Ifa, which corresponds, Jason, to 16 specific chapters of Black Lives Matter here in the United States and in Canada. Nothing is by accident, as we are exposing the history of Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm in connection to Kanye West today. So on the 6th of March in 1775, with Rothschild money, Prince Hall created the Prince Hall Masonic Order. And he was instructed, Jason, by the global elite that no Black person can ever attain any level higher than that of a 33rd degree Mason, because anyone that has graduated through matriculation to become a 33rd and 1/2 degree Mason, they are connected to the bloodline of the 13 Illuminati families, going back not just to the bloodline of the Nephilims in Genesis chapter 6, and this is how they think, that their bloodline goes back to the Nephilims, the 13 families, and also their bloodline, Jason, goes back to the bloodline of the serpent through Cain. Another topic for another day. So, according to the book, Jason, Masonic abolitionists, Freemasonry, and the Underground Railroad in Illinois by Daryl Lamar Andrews. Dr. Andrews says that Harriet Tubman, and you notice there's a Wikipedia page for Miss Tubman. If you can go to it now, and you notice her fingers are interlocked with her thumbs going up north in the form of a miniature pyramid of what we call pyramid. That is a symbol of a high degree Prince Hall Mason. So the Western powers of the North chose this woman to recruit Black men and women, not because they love Black people, but because they needed men and women who were engineers, land surveyors, who understood the art of medicine and dentistry, okay, and who understood war, because the North needed the slaves to help the North to defeat the South later, between April of 12th of 1861 to the 9th of April in 1865. So that Harriet Tubman photo on Wikipedia, she has her fingers interlocked. Now, people's going to say, oh, Bishop, it doesn't mean that. It's always Black people that I am battling against, because, Jason, not all Black people, but a great percentage of Black people in this country, they don't know who they are, Jason. They think that their identification is in their skin color. That's what we are, but that's not who we are. So then, to understand Prince Hall Masonry, we have to look at the abolitionists of Albert Pike, Rob Morris, the founder of the Eastern Stars, John Brown, and Levi Coffin. So Levi Coffin, John Brown, Rob Morris, Albert Pike had strategically recruited Harriet Tubman to lead a certain percentage of former slaves out of the Black diaspora in the South in order to aid the North. 70% of the slaves were called major slaves, like a major and a minor in your educational degree. So 70% were engineers, okay, and brick masons and land surveyors who also understood medicine and dentistry, that they brought that psyop, that mindset out of Africa. Yes, they didn't know how to read and write, but you cannot destroy the ability of a people's past, who then will tell us that Africa is not only the cradle civilization, but Africa has built the Western Hemisphere. I'm not teaching race, Jason. What I'm attempting to do is to schematically reveal to your audience why Kanye West said what he said in regards to Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm.
Real quick,
So,
Bishop, I think we
go
got to
right ahead.
mention about this Order of the Eastern Stars. I've heard about it in, just preparing the graphic for today, but this is the first time I've looked at their Wikipedia page, and they have this General Grand Chapter logo. I'm sure you've seen this, but take a look,
Yes.
Bishop. It's a pentagram inside a pentagon, and it's remarkably similar to this sigil of Baphomet.
Jason, again, you are a great host. Now, notice that five-pointed pentagram or pentagon, which we also call later a hexagram. So a pentagram or a pentagon represents the five senses of Baphomet, which is now matriculated into the secret society called the Eastern Stars. Why do they call it the Eastern Stars? Because anything God has in truth, the devil has a counterfeit. Now, from a biblical standpoint, Jason, I'm glad that you brought up the Eastern Stars. From a biblical standpoint, Jesus Christ was born in the East, according to the Gospels. His Hebrew name is Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. A star was not in the West. A star was in the East. There you go. So wise men, not three wise men came from the East in droves of thousands of wise men coming to seek the wisest man in history, Jesus Christ. So now Satan has counterfeited that, okay, and called it the Eastern Stars, okay? So then, as we're talking about Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm, so then Albert Pike and Rob Morris and John Brown and Levi Coffin strategically recruited this woman, okay, to build the Northern Financial and Military Industrial Complex, okay? Now, Benjamin Banneker, like I said a few minutes ago, to all of your listeners, look up a search on Dr. Benjamin Banneker, who was a high degree Prince Hall Mason and also a Eastern Star who understood land surveying, Jason. He understood geometry and geometric measurements. Dr. Benjamin Banneker was one of the most intelligent leaders in American history, who was commissioned by President George Washington to build the foundation of what you and I call the District of Columbia, okay? As we're talking about Kanye West, okay, in the Prince Hall paradigm in connection to Harriet Tubman. There are three letters, Jason, or three words, okay, that are encoded within the system of what we call slavery on the left, because the Democratic Party was the party that created the institutionalization of slavery. The Republican Party, the GOP, had nothing to do with slavery. It was the Democratic Party who not only created slavery here in the South in the United States, but also the Democratic Party, which fueled the Confederacy back during the 16 and 1700s, Jason. The Democratic Party also created the Ku Klux Klan through a Rothschild agent and attorney, Judah Philip Benjamin, who had hired Albert Pike, the same man that recruited Harriet Tubman, and also recruited a second man, Judah Philip Benjamin did, by the name of General Nathan Bedford Forrest, to be the face of the Klan in order to hide the synagogue of Satan, not of Jewish people, but of Khazarians who are nothing more than counterfeit Jews, whose bloodline goes back to Turkey, of Turkish origin. Here are the three words, Jason. Abolition, A, manumission, M, and emancipation, E. Now, Jason, in 1787, guess where? In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the hometown of Kobe Bean Bryant, the hometown of the Prince Hall Masonic Order, the hometown of the Boule Secret Society, Sigma Pi Phi, has now become the hometown of the African A, Methodist M, Episcopal E, Church, which was founded in early 1787 by Frederick Douglass, a high-ranking Eastern Star, who was also a high-ranking 33rd degree Mason within the Prince Hall paradigm, Absalom Jones, and Richard Allen. These three former slaves created the African Methodist Episcopal Church, not just to serve Black people, but also the AME, Jason, is a religious Trojan horse that would help the North and the South to incorporate abolitionist Africa, A, Methodist manumission, M, and Episcopal emancipation. Well, who and what is an abolitionist? An abolitionist is a man and a woman whose intent was to abolish slavery by recruiting certain former slaves, not because they loved Black people, but they needed to build the North, okay, for the incoming Civil War between 1861 and 1865. The term manumission, capital M-A-N-U, mission, it simply means, Jason, that the slave being recruited by an abolitionist, A, was to be manumission or redesigned to be emancipated as a new form of slave. Jason, though legally slavery was abolished through the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and 2 years later, the ratification of the 13th Amendment, but psychologically, Jason, spiritually and emotionally, slavery has only been manumissioned or redesigned, okay? So when we're talking about AME, not just African Methodist Episcopal Church, but the African was to be recruited by an abolitionist. In order to give a methodology, Jason, Methodist, through a manumission person to be a redesigned slave in order to be emancipated as an Episcopalian, of what we call an Episcopal, which the Black church then was controlled with Rothschild money. That's AME, not just African Methodist Episcopal Church, but the abolitionists would redesign the slave through manumission in order for that slave, Jason, to be emancipated. Okay? This is some heavy information here today. So then, during the Civil War, Jason, between 1861 to 1865, there were not only underground railroads, but there were homes and houses that were backed with Northern money that they got from the Rothschilds out of Great Britain in order to provide safe passage and safe housing for the former slaves to be redesigned through manumission, to be emancipated to the North in order to free the North from the destruction of the South. So the slave, the man, a Black man and woman, is not really a free Black man or woman, but they have been redesigned, Jason. Let me give you an example. Look at the American sports industrial complex. Now, the game of basketball, 90% of the National Basketball Association is made up of Black men. Now, Dr. James Naismith, we were told, had created the game of basketball. But the origin of basketball did not begin with Naismith. The origin, Jason, of what I call historicity of basketball, okay, or basketball, a basketball, started in the year of 1712 during the time of Willie Lynch. You know, I had talked about him before, where many of the slaves, the male slaves, who wanted freedom and talked about freedom and were deemed to be unstable, many of them left the plantation or escaped the plantation, but many of these men were caught and were castrated, Jason, and excuse my language, the testicles of these black men were cut off from their scrotum and dipped, okay, in brown paint. I kid you not. And they were dried and they were
Wait,
played by the
dipped in
slave.
what?
Yes, the testicles of black men, okay, who escaped slavery, not all, but most of them escaped slavery. Um, their testicles were castrated or cut off and played with by the sick slave masters by throwing the testicles in baskets. That's the origin, my friend, of basketball. But you got 90% of the NBA, what we call the association, okay, that these black men, 90%, they don't know the origin of the game of basketball. Where did football come from? Not just from Canton, Ohio, the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The game of football, the concept also came from 1712, where a lot of African men who rebelled, people like Nat Turner, who had rebelled against their slave master, not only were they hung like Nat Turner, but many of these men were decapitated. Their heads, Jason, were decapitated, dipped in brown paint, and dried in the sun to be kicked around by other slaves because the head was dried and stuffed inside of a gutted pig. That's why the football is called the pigskin. 90%, 80% of the NFL is black men. They don't know this, Jason. Why? Because they've been redesigned or manumission as a new technological slave. As we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm. Yes, the entire American and global sports industrial complex is a global plantation. Whether you're black, white, brown, Latino, or Cuban, you're drafted out of college and sometimes as early as high school in baseball. You're drafted by slave masters of the owners of these pro sports leagues, and now you are a multi-millionaire cotton producer. The only difference, Jason, manumission, they've been redesigned, okay? Physically, they're still on the plantation, but behind the plantation, it has a different background or a prop, just like in Hollywood. So the green room back in the 1700s was the plantation. Now the background green room, Jason, is the National Basketball Association, the National Football League, the National Hockey League, and Major League Baseball. So these men, multi-millionaires, but they are slaves, Jason. LeBron James is a slave. The late Kobe Bryant, he was a slave. They're controlled by agents and handlers who serve at the behest of their slave masters who own not just the teams in these pro sports leagues, but Rothschilds and the deep state run the American sports industrial complex. As we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, in the Prince Hall paradigm. So, Jason, I'm almost done because I really want to open the floor up for questions, not only from you, but from your listeners. Harriet Tubman was a spy for the North during the Civil War, Jason, between 1861 to 1865. Her code name during this protracted period of time was called Sarcophagus or Sarcophagus, capital Sarcophagus. Well, that's a Greek word in a Latin phrase, sarcophagus, which means casket or coffin. Wait a minute now, I'm confused. So, the Northern financial and military industrial complex had recruited this woman to be viewed not as a free black woman, but to be viewed as a sarcophagus or to be viewed as a coffin or a casket. This is the sick mind of what we call the Northern and the Southern industrial complex. And Jason, as a side note, nobody talks about Northern racism. They talk about Southern racism. But Jason, Northern racism and Southern racism is both ends of the same snake, Jason. So then now, during the advent of the Civil War, this woman is a spy, not just for the North. She's a spy, Jason, for the South. She's playing both sides. Why? She's a paid provocateur agent with Rothschild money being paid by both North and South. You know what, Jason? There's going to be people, especially black people. Oh, I don't believe that, Bishop. Oh, Bishop, you're an Uncle Tom. I don't care what they call me. I am a contract killer representing the kingdom of God. My job, Jason, is to reveal darkness. I don't care what color you are, as we're talking about this woman who is deemed to be a Moses. But in actuality, she was a killer. And you know why she was a killer, Jason? Because she forced a lot of these former slaves, anywhere from 70 to 300, through the barrel of a pistol. Because a few of them were actually killed, according to Dr. Ridley, concerning the book, The Freemasons. Few of the slaves were killed because they were going to expose this fallacy through this woman being used by the Northern military industrial complex. As we're talking about Harriet Tubman, okay, and I don't know why Margaret Singer's on my mind, but Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. Quickly here, and so Harriet Tubman was a high-ranking Mason of not just of the Eastern Stars, my friend, but of the Prince Hall Masonic Order. Jason, I'm going to say this to a lot of your listeners. A lot of your listeners, if your pastor at your church is a Prince Hall Mason, you have to call them out. There are pastors, black pastors, throughout this country and throughout the world who are preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, but at the same time, Jason, they are members of the Boule Secret Society and Sigma Pi Phi and these black fraternal and sorority, black Greek letter secret societies, including the Eastern Stars and this Prince Hall paradigm. So, abolition A, African, manumission M, a redesigned slave, to be emancipated E, Episcopal. African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is one of the most powerful Black religious organizations on this earth, is nothing more than a Trojan horse for the abolition, the manumission, the redesignment of a modern day slave through emancipation, Episcopalian thought. Jason, this is mind blowing. And there was a secret society going back to 1785. This secret society was here in New York City, my friend, or New York, called the Manumission Society, which John Jay, and I believe there's a college named after him here in the city.
Yeah.
Yes, so Dr. John Jay had created the New York Manumission Society of New York in 1785, which held on its executive board slave owners of the South, including slave owners of the North. Yes, their slavery existed in parts of New York, in Illinois, in Ohio, including West Virginia. So the slaves being delivered by Harriet Tubman came from one plantation, the South, to a northern plantation, the North. So then, did Kanye West tell the truth about Harriet Tubman? Yes, because Kanye West is a man who is now what I call a free Black man. Now, we have to pray for Kanye, Brother Jason, because his life is literally on the line. Now, the book 12 Years a Slave and Harriet, the Moses of Her People, okay, by Dr. Sarah Bradford. She had said that Harriet Tubman was a high-ranking spy, an agent provocateur, paid with Rothschild money through the North to aid the North to destroy the South, but was also paid by the same Rothschilds who supplied the North, who was also supplying the South through Harriet Tubman. So this is what the Rothschilds do. They supply both sides, North and South, South and North, in order to destroy both entities, so that the Rothschilds can come in to take over. Now, I'm almost finished here. This is some powerful information. Now, remember, I believe a week or two ago, we talked about the Bloods in the Crips, okay? We talked about the German interpretation, Jason, for blood, okay, is Polter, okay? The German interpretation for Crip is the term Geist, Geist, or ghost. Now, that's the term poltergeist. You and I talked about this Glee actress that was found dead on Lake Piru, right, in California. And you have made mention that she was 33 years old. There's that number 33, okay? And this woman, Naya Rivera, was taken out because she was a satanic sacrifice. Why Lake Piru? Well, Piru, capital P-I-R, means primus also, which is another Latin word. What is primus? Capital P-R-I-M-U-S. Well, that was the name of the first son of Prince Hall. So then, the grandchild of Thomas Prince Hall, which was the son of Prince Hall, his name was Primus Hall, which also means Piru or primal fear, like the movie. So then, this is what I call a psychosis, my friend, as we're talking about Kanye West, okay, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. Give me 5 more minutes before we open the floor up for Q&A. So then, from after the Civil War, here comes what we call Reconstruction. It's not just the reconstruction of the South, Jason, but it is the redesignment of the Northern Black person that came from the South between 1849 to 1860 through the Underground Railroads. And how did Harriet Tubman know where to go? She was trained by the global elite that you and I call the Rothschilds through their agents in the North, Ulysses S. Grant, okay? So then, the Democratic Party that we call today was also heavily involved in what we call Reconstruction, or the manumission of not just the South, but the manumission or the redesignment of the Black mind. We cannot hold them on a physical plantation. Now we have to redesign them through a psychological and a financial plantation. So they cannot own any professional sports leagues or teams. They can be a rich man or woman, but they cannot be a wealthy rich man or Black woman. There's a difference, Jason. Allow me to explain this. This is what we call manumism. So then, when we look at Michael Jordan is a billionaire. Michael Jordan is rich, but Michael Jordan is not wealthy because Michael Jordan was put into that place as the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. The late Kobe Bryant was rich, but Kobe Bryant was not wealthy because Kobe Bryant did not own a NBA team. That's why he was taken out during our series, during the Kobe Bryant and Luciferian Project Completed series. He was approached by Princess Rima at the behest of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia through Mohammed bin Salman to create a pro basketball league. What happened? They closed the eyes of Kobe Bryant. They wanted Kobe to stay on the plantation as a rich slave, but not to have the ability to own the plantation. So then, after Reconstruction, then in coming in 1934, now Reconstruction took place between 1863, Jason, to 1877. Man, I love teaching here today. So then, the Democratic Party in the 1930s, after the Great Depression, the FDR administration, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in 1934, my friend, created the National Housing Foundation Act, okay, which later became HUD. So the National Housing Act Foundation in 1934 began a new manumission or the redesignment of a plantation, now called the American Ghetto Industrial Complex. Now, remember the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago, named after the grandfather of Valerie June Jarrett, okay? Now, Valerie June Jarrett is a Prince Hall Mason. Her mother, Barbara Taylor, was a Prince Hall Mason. And the mother of Barbara Taylor, Dorothy Taylor, was also a Prince Hall Mason who had signed on, Dorothy Taylor, the grandmother of Valerie June Jarrett, signed on and off of the 1939 Negro Project that began the final solution for the extermination of Black people through Planned Parenthood. This is touched by an abolitionist going through manumission, redesignment, in order to be emancipated in America, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So then FDR created the 1934 National Housing Act. And then 3.5 years later, in 1937, also was the year that the National Housing Act then later became the Housing and for Urban Development, called HUD, which was birthed in 1965, Jason. Okay? So the Housing and Urban Development Act is a new word for a plantation. It's the same devil, Jason, under a different name. Okay? So this was a part of LBJ's Great Society. Lyndon Baines Johnson, according to Doris Kearns, okay, you and I had talked about her some months ago, a great writer, even though she's liberal, but she is a great historian when it comes to the history of the U.S. presidency. Doris Kearns said that Lyndon Baines Johnson not only was a Klansman before his presidential term, but also after his presidential term was a member of the state of Texas Ku Klux Klan. I'm talking about Lyndon Baines Johnson, whom Black people praise as a great civil rights and human rights leader. So the term, Jason, white supremacy, according to Doris Kearns Goodwin, she said that term, white supremacy, was first coined by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965. This is the term that Black people use every day. Or you're a white supremacist, or you believe in white privilege, or you are a person that enjoys the blessings of being white through white privilege, or through white supremacy. That came up out of the Democratic Party via Lyndon Baines Johnson. They didn't come up out of the Republican Party, my friend, as we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm. So then, through the 1934 Housing Act, which gave birth to the 1965 Housing and Urban Development Act, or called HUD, which is a present day redesigned slavery plantation. Okay? So for the past 85 years, Black America, not all, but most of Black Americans are members of the Democratic plantation. Now, as a side note, before I end this teaching today, Jason, of Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm. Lyndon Baines Johnson, who won the Margaret Sanger Award in 1966, along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Lyndon Baines Johnson said, after the signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, he said, I'm going to keep these NIGGERs in the Democratic Party for the next 200 years. Guess what, Brother Goodman? It's working.
Yep.
It's working. They don't care if Joe Sleepy Creeping Biden says the word NIGGER, but because these Black folk are so sick and so inundated psychologically on this Democratic plantation, they give white folk on the left a pass, okay? In my conclusion, in 1965, came the Voting Rights Act, okay? Also through the 1965 Housing and Urban Development Act that began the creation of the American gang industrial complex, that segregation was not abolished. Segregation, people, has been redesigned through what you and I call manumission. And also in the 1965 Title 19 of the Social Security Act, now black people are receiving crumbs from their slave master, okay, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Nancy Jezebel Pelosi, Chucky Schumer, okay, Adam Chifty Schiff. These are slave masters who are controlling the psyche of Black Americans. Not all, because a lot of Black Americans, Jason, are beginning to wake up. And in my conclusion, during the 1967 Food Stamp Act, here it goes, now the welfare state established by the democratic left has now provided a race card with an unlimited balance of what excuses through victimhood. Now God has raised up a man by the name of Donald J. Trump who's got balls as the size of Mount Rushmore. He is not a man that's going to sit at the table of his enemies, drinking a glass of beer and eating a bowl of peanuts. This is not Barack Hussein Obama. This is President Donald J. Trump, who's going to destroy the welfare state, which is nothing more, Jason, than the benefits of the Democratic Party. In my conclusion, now remember, was it a week or two ago, you and I had touched on Black liberation theology. This is connected, Jason, to Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. So going back, Jason, as early as the mid-40s, the KGB, which is the Soviet intelligence agency, which is the equivalent of the American CIA, in 1945 was commissioned, okay, by Premier Joseph Stalin to travel to Central and South America to begin to recruit Jesuit priests, Jason, to be the creators of a new theology called liberation theology. So, Black liberation theology is birthed, Jason, out of Latin American liberation theology, which officially began in 1968, where the KGB recruited 3 Jesuit secret society priests. I want all your listeners to write this down. We're still talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, in the Prince Hall paradigm here on Crowdsource the Truth. So then, 3 Jesuit priests were recruited by the KGB in 1968. Gustavo Gutierrez from Peru, Leonardo Boff, capital B-O-F-F, out of Brazil, and Juan Luis Segundo out of Uruguay. So these 3 Jesuit priests, all right, Gustavo Gutierrez, Leonardo Boff, and Juan Luis Segundo were the founding fathers of Latin American liberation theology, which is based, Jason, on Marxism, communism, and socialism, using the gospel of Jesus Christ, okay, in order to teach victimhood. That's not true theology, liberation theology. It's based on the study of redistributing wealth, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor. This Peter Pan psychology, and the term pan means cornucopia, a tune-horn demon, just like the term that Black people embrace, Pan-Africanism. But most Black people have no idea what that term pan means. It means cornucopia, a two-horn demonic system. Another topic for another day. So then we go from Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, the Civil War, Reconstruction, the birth of the American ghetto industrial complex in 1934 and 35 to the 1965 Housing and Urban Development Act to now the 1968 creation of liberation theology being controlled by the Soviet Union through three Latin Jesuit priests, Jason. Now, in 1968, there was a major conference. You and I had talked about this, I believe, last week or week before last. In my conclusion, there was a major conference, my friend, that was hosted by Fidel Castro out of Cuba, that was to take place in 1968 in Medellin, Colombia, and the conference was called the International Conference on Liberation Theology. The International Conference on Liberation Theology in 1968. Specifically in April of 1968. So Fidel Castro, through Gustavo Gutierrez out of Peru, invited a young African-American man from Chicago whose name was James Cone, who later, the following year in 1969, would create Black liberation theology. So James Cone travels from Chicago and flies to Medellin, Colombia, with financial backing from the government of Cuba through the Castro regime, a killer, to take part in the 1968 International Conference on Liberation Theology. The following year, in 1969, Dr. James Combs, a year after the conference, writes Black Theology and Black Power. Black Theology and Black Power, which is the template, Jason, for victimhood, okay? Because the logos of Black liberation theology is not only that doll, okay, coming up out of Colombia, which many witches and warlocks use to this day. This doll that looks like Jesus Christ, but is not, used as the symbol of suffering and victimhood. But that second logo that you showed last week, Jason, of the black fist that's shaped like the continent of Africa, with the mouth of the man going up to Egypt. So then, Dr. James Cone, I'm going to blow your mind here, Jason. Dr. James Cone got his financial tuition from a white family by the name of the Boyack family, capital B-O-Y-A-C-K. This is in the book Black Theology and Black Power by Dr. James Cone. Dr. Cone said in his book, Black Theology and Black Power, which is the template of Black victimhood, okay, and self-enslavement, that James and Alice Boyack, a couple out of Chicago, paid for the entire educational life of both the undergrad years of James Cone at a college, okay, called the Philander Smith College in 1958, and also the Boyacks paid for the graduate degrees program that Dr. Cone obtained, both his master's and his PhD, through Northwestern University. Who paid for that? Not a black family, not any black person. A beautiful white family out of Chicago, James and Alice Boyack. Wait a minute now, I'm confused, Jason. On one hand, James Cone said that white folk represent white privilege, as if any white person can go to the bank and get $100,000. Stop. Was also, James Cone said, that white people represents white privilege, the white power structure, white racism, okay, through white supremacy, but yet he got his money from the same group who represents, in his mind, white supremacy, white privilege, and white racism. That's hypocritical, Jason. As we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm, in my conclusion, to understand the text and the contextualization of what Black liberation theology is. Now, according to the encyclopedia, notice the term encyclop, or the third eye, another topic for another day. The encyclopedia of the 60s, a decade of culture. It says that Black liberation theology was birthed out of the psyop of excuses and self-hate. Black liberation theology was born out of the psyop of excuses and self-hate. Now, Jason is going to get deeper. Give me 5 minutes and we are done here today. As we're talking about not only Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. There is a professor, my friend, at a major university on the West Coast, a man by the name of Professor Philip Butler. He is a professor at Loyola Marymount University, a professor at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. Dr. Butler, who is a student of the late Dr. James Cone, and also a student of Latin American liberation theology, has created a new paradigm, Jason, called Black transhuman theology. I want you to get this.
What?
Black transhuman theology. Now, what is Black transhuman theology as taught by Professor Philip Butler at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles? He is teaching that the Black psychic or mind can be transhumanized beyond that which is human to that which is anti-human, or that which is spirit. Not the spirit of God, but the spirit of revenge going against the power structure. Wait a minute now. So Black transhuman theology is also a doctrine where any non-Black person is deemed as unnormal or unhuman or a non-human. Any non-Black person through Black transhuman or transhumanistic theology, stating that God is Black, the angels are Black, demons are white, Satan is white, and then any non-Black person in America or throughout the Black diaspora around the world, any non-Black person is deemed to be unfit for society, because that white person or any non-Black person is not a human being. This is Black transhuman theology, Jason. I'm telling you, so if your listeners can just look up Dr. or Professor Philip Butler of Loyola Marymount University. He is a student of the late Dr. James Cone, and he's also a student of Latin American liberation theology and a member of the Black Lives chapter in Los Angeles. And also, not just a member of the Black Lives Matter chapter in Los Angeles, who are pouring libations on every White House, okay, or Caucasian house throughout LA County to put curses on the homes of white people. This comes from Dr. James Cone, who got his financial help from a white family. It's hypocritical. Now, this Philip Butler is a member of the Los Angeles chapter of Black Lives Matter. He is a ardent supporter of Black transhuman theology, that anything that's non-Black is either satanic or that is of an animalistic mindset. That is a racist connotation. And my friend, 2 more minutes, and we're going to give the floor over for Q&A. So then, from Kanye West to Harriet Tubman to the Prince Hall paradigm to Black liberation theology, there's a minister out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, hometown of Kobe B. Bryant, hometown of the Prince Hall Masonic Order, hometown of the Boule Secret Society, a minister by the name of Dr. Eric Mason. He has a website, Jason. It says PastorEMace.com. Pastor, then the letter E, then Mace, MASE.com. Now, I'm not going to castigate my brother, but Dr. Eric Mason is a powerful proponent of a new Black form of liberation theology called the woke movement. Capital WOKE, okay? So the woke movement is an offshoot or a branch of Black liberation theology through Dr. James Cone, now to Dr. Eric Mason. Now, Dr. Eric Mason, and I want you to listen, this is powerful information. Dr. Eric Mason, his background is connected to the Nation of Islam, okay? So then, I'm not castigating him. And if he wants to call the bishop and come on my radio show, listen, I welcome the challenge, because I never lost a challenge, Jason. Because I'm a historian and an academic, I back up my teachings with facts. So Dr. Eric Mason, a powerful minister, is the senior pastor of the woke church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, who is also a member of the Philadelphia chapter of Black Lives Matter. So he wrote a book, okay, some time ago called Woke Church. Capital WOKE. This book came out in October of 2018. So the woke church is a dogma or a doctrine that calls for an urgent call for Christians to confront racism and injustice. But the woke church is another name for a Black liberational type of church. It's the same devil, okay, but under a different name. It's the same theological plantational thought, but under a different name.
Bishop, I've noticed something already.
Go right ahead, Jake.
Look at this logo for the woke church. Now, what was the thing we were looking at the beginning of the show with the Baphomet pentagram?
Yes.
Who was that?
You're talking about with Baphomet. You're talking about the Knights Templar?
No, it was the
the basketball. You're talking about the basketball.
The Eastern Star guys. Eastern Star.
Yes, Eastern Star. Robert Morris. Yes.
So let's see their logo again, because they've got these things inside the. Let me see if I'm getting close on this, because he's got the justice. He's got the scales of justice up there. 2 daggers. I guess it's different stuff.
Wow.
But they always. Well, here's kind of a dagger. I don't know. He's got these little symbols in his woke church, including this swirl that I know a lot of people are going to associate with that FBI symbol. But anyway, sorry, Bishop,
Yeah.
I just noticed that.
No, please, no, go ahead. Jason, again, you're hitting nerves with me. Again, Dr. Eric Mason, a black theologian, okay? But his psyop is connected to the Nation of Islam because he came up in the Nation of Islam, and there's going to be black people saying, you're not telling the truth, you are a seller. I don't care what they call me. The truth is the truth. So Dr. Eric Mason, okay, he is living a psyop of teaching Black America how to stay attached. That's a great link there to the Nation of Islam. How to stay attached to the pain and to the trauma of your past. As gifted as Louis Farrakhan is, and Eric Mason is, and Dr. James Cone was, and Malcolm X. But these men, as great and gifted as they were controlled by the historical pain and their historical trauma, which they have unleashed on Black America through victimhood to view anything that is non-Black as evil. My question is, Jason, where is Black Lives Matter when it comes to Planned Parenthood clinics? Where's Black Lives Matter? Since 1973, we've had over 19 million Black babies that have been slaughtered. Where's Black Lives Matter? Where's Black Lives Matter when a Black supporter of Donald Trump was murdered, I believe, in St. Louis? Where's Black Lives Matter? Where's Black Lives Matter when Bloods and Crips kill each other? Where's Black Lives Matter? Because Black Lives Matter is a scam. Black Lives Matter is not only a scam, but it is one of the most powerful terrorist organizations in American history that is being controlled by their slave master, George Soros, who is weaponizing and manipulating their pain and their trauma, including Eric Mason. So then, all of these Black organizations were birthed, Jason, okay, because of Black liberation theology. Now, before we close out today, notice again that book called The Woke Church, okay? There's an upcoming book by Dr. Eric Mason called Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. Wait a minute, wait, I'm confused. Wait a minute now. He says, urban apologetics. Now, to your students, okay, our listeners, the term apologetics is a Greek term simply signifying to defend the gospel. No, they don't apologize, but the term apologetics means a defender of the gospel. So urban apologetics or urban defenders of what? Of the restoration of Black dignity, not human dignity, Jason, regardless of race, creed, color, or ethnicity, but restoring Black dignity with the gospel. Number one, we don't need to be awoke because we are awakened by Jesus Christ. And number two, how can Dr. Mason say through urban apologetics that Black people, they need their skin color to be restored through no, your skin color or your pigmentation is not restored through the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. It is your soul, your nature that is born again. Again, Jason, Black liberation theology is now called the woke movement, okay?
Well, Bishop, isn't it also insulting to insinuate you're a dignified guy? I don't think you need your dignity to be restored.
No. You see, again, Jason, this is victimhood, okay? It is victimhood. One of the other books and I'm going to come back to that because you made a powerful statement, my friend. Another book that Dr. Mason wrote back in 2014, Beat God to the Punch. Now, beat God to the punch? Beat God to the punch, okay? Because Jesus demands your life. Again, this man, Pastor Mason, is portraying himself as a victim, Jason. He's portraying himself because the premise of the woke church that is given birth through the redesignment of Black liberation theology as the woke movement. So the woke dogma is that Black people is to make right an imaginary crime of Western capitalism and white supremacy, imaginary, and beneficiaries of so-called white privilege. So they're teaching Black people, you're a victim, someone owes you something, and now listen, Jason, now George Soros, through these three lesbian witches, okay, and we're talking about Alicia Garza, whose real name is Alicia Schwartz, which is also the last name of George Soros, which is George Schwartz, Patrice Cullors, and Opa Tometi. They're teaching these women to train thousands of Black people throughout the country and in Canada, throughout the world, to force white people to bow down to them. I kid you not. And to repent for something that white people had nothing to do with. And I'm saying this to my white brothers and sisters. If you are approached by a Black supremacist, yes, because Black supremacy is just as evil as white, brown, red, or yellow supremacy. So my white brothers and sisters, hear me. If you are approached by a Black liberation theologist or someone from the Black Lives Matter terrorist organization asking you, telling you to bow down, tell them to kiss your behind. Why? Because the only person you bow down to is God and God alone, whose name is the Lord Jesus Christ. This is madness, Jason. As we end this today, Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm. Black liberation theology has given birth to the African Blood Brotherhood, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Liberation Army Front, who wanted to blow up the Statue of Liberty in 1965, a few days before the death of Malcolm X. Black liberation theology, James Cone, who got his money from a beautiful white family, has given birth to Black radical organizations like the Black Radical Congress and the Black Socialists of America and the Coalition of Black Defenders of Faith and the Detroit Revolutionary Union Movement. These are communist, socialist, and Marxist organizations that have been birthed out of the Nation of Islam, that has been given birth out of Black liberation theology, out of Latino liberation theology, which has given birth during the 60s, Jason, the Black consciousness movements, the Black Pan-Africanist movement, because the word pan means cornucopia, a tune-horn demon, that has given birth to the Black Hebrew Israelites. You and I got to do a series on that. The Black Hebrew Israelites were created by 5 men, okay, who were in prison for murder and for robbery, but they created the present-day Black Hebrew Israelite organization.
Wow.
Which has given birth to Me Too, which has given birth to feminism, which we call feminazis. Who created feminism? A CIA agent, a woman by the name of Gloria Steinem. Gloria Steinem, Jason, worked for the Central Intelligence Agency in the 50s and 60s by heading a front organization called the Independent Research Service, which was a creature of the Central Intelligence Agency. These
Wow.
feminists, Jason, and that is the end of
Wow.
what we call Kanye West, yes, and Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm. Looks like you got something to say, Jason.
Well, I
Oh,
just had no idea that Gloria
yes,
Steinem had anything to do with the CIA, but this is the CIA's own website
yes.
releasing the document.
Yeah. There you go. Gloria
Wow.
Steinem was a agent provocateur.
Hmm.
So feminism, or the concept of feminazism, was created by the Central Intelligence Agency, where the agency, as early as the late 40s, wanted to bring unbalance and disorder to the American home through the suffrage movement that goes back to the 20s by creating a feminist organization, a feminist movement to bring about destruction to the American home, Jason,
Now, wait a minute, Bishop,
called
because what you're saying pertains to this document. You want to talk about disorder. So, just even on this page, we see disorder because they're telling us that the document release date is October
Yes,
22nd, 2004, but the
yes,
document creation date is 12 years later in 2016. So, that's obviously inaccurate.
yes. It's inaccurate because, Jason, Gloria Steinem hates men. She hates Donald Trump. Gloria Steinem hates herself. She hates America. She should be in prison, okay? She should be in prison. Who is that
I,
woman that David Hawkins always brings up? Bernadine Dorn. These
yeah.
are devils, Jason. They're of the synagogue. They're not true Jews. These are killers. Bernadine Dorn and Gloria Steinem are CIA agents.
Wow.
Okay? Gloria Steinem created the Independent Research Service going back in the 50s and 60s, which is still a front for the CIA. And in my conclusion, when we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall paradigm, all of these Black organizations, all of these feministic organizations are the offspring, excellent pictures there, Jason, are the offspring of Black liberation theology going back to Harriet Tubman, but being exposed by my brother, Kanye West. And that is Kanye West, Harriet Tubman, and the Prince Hall paradigm. These three women, they're not witches, Jason, because they're Black women. Bishop is not saying that. And they're not witches because they're women. Jason, they're witches because they're operating not just under a witchcraft religion, Odu Ifa, but they're witches, Jason, because they're operating under a spirit, a psyop that doesn't come from God. Now they're targeting churches and synagogues.
Wow.
Jason, they got to be stopped, and they will be stopped. Now, President Trump is sending troops, federal troops, and federal agents to Chicago. This killing has got to stop in Chicago. I don't mean to preach. This killing. Now, where's Farrakhan? Okay. Where are the Black leaders in Chicago? Nowhere to be found. No Black Lives Matter because these are ends killing each other. But when a white cop, for some reason, in defending himself, not that there is not racist cops, but 99% of cops in this country are great men and women of God, great patriots, okay? But see, it would change, Jason, the narrative of Black Lives Matter if they go to Chicago, if they go to Watts and Compton and South Central. You won't see them rioting Los Angeles because of the Bloods and Crips. It changes, it goes against the narrative. It's all about whitey. Why? It is the psyop of the woke movement through Eric Mason, who's tied to the Nation of Islam and tied to Black liberation theology. It is evil, it is demonic, and it is time for Black people to let it go. And there's
I'm
a
glad you
great
came
difference.
back to that, Bishop, because I just want to add one thing. This sort
Take
of
your time.
bookends, I think Actually, the first shows we did together were all about Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And
Yes,
when you're saying that this guy, Eric Mason, is demonic, a
yes.
couple things I noticed. First of all, I don't
Take your
believe
time.
his last name is actually Mason. That seems
I don't think
convenient.
so either.
And also, if he's a religious or spiritual leader, what sort of man of God would even believe or say that a human can beat God at anything? It seems
Yes,
blasphemous.
it is blasphemy. It is blasphemy. Be God? Now think about this, Jason.
It's
To be
crazy.
God. When you say that, oh, Jason, boy, you hit a powerful nerve with me. When we say woke, there are two words that are extensions of woke. These words are awake with the A and the term wake together, which means to be resurrected psychologically. Then the second term, Jason, of awake, separated, which is a funeral dinner where people get together in the house of their dead
Right,
loved ones, where the
right.
coffin is in the house. This happened, this came up out of slavery, where Black families were not allowed to have funerals in graveyards throughout the South. So the concept of a wake started through Willie Lynch in 1712 in the Hamptons in Virginia, where he forced Black families, if they had a dead loved one, to have a wake in the home of this dead loved one in a casket or a wooden coffin, to have the funeral in the home as a precursor for an official ceremony. So you talking about wake, like A and wake together as in awakening, or you're talking about a wake? This woke community is a psyop of none of the first awakened, because we're supposed to be already awakened by God. So what is Dr. Mason saying? That we are not awakened by God because we're in the psyop of the second psyop called a wake. We're in the house of our dead loved ones, and that dead loved one is what? Is us, Jason. We're in that coffin through victimhood because we look at ourselves not as a human being, being a part of the human family. We look at ourselves as non-human, but yet we call non-Black people non-human. Why? Because Jason, I'm going to say, oh my God, I know you got to go, but I'm going to say this and we're done here today as we're talking about Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall Paradigm, Volume 1. You see, Jason, that one of my favorite sayings that I love to quote in era, and I want Black people to hear me because this is very important. In era doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. An error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. So then, Dr. James Cone, which has produced Eric Mason, Louis Farrakhan, Reverend Al Vitamin B Deficient Sharpen, Jesse Jackson, okay, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, these are the offspring of both the pain and the trauma of a people who don't know who they are. And now they don't look at themselves as an error. They look at you, Jason, as an error. Notice, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. And I'm going to say something to Black people right now, and I'm done, Jason. This is the tail end of our lecture here today of Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall Paradigm. You Black people, you Black America, you shall find the truth when you, Black America, examine the problem. The problem, Black people, is never apart from the answer. The problem is the answer. In other words, the problem is not white people. The problem is not with the Republican Party. The problem is not with our great president, President Donald J. Trump. The problem is with us, with Black America, because we hate ourselves unconsciously, because we're in love with a party that was not designed for the liberation of the Black family, and that is the Democratic Party. So the problem is Black people, but also the problem, which is Black people, is also the answer. When you find the truth, when you shall find the truth. When you examine the problem, you Black people, the problem, you Black people, is never apart from the answer. The problem, you Black man, you Black woman, the problem is the answer. And Jason, this has been a very powerful show today. This is volume 1 of Kanye West, Harriet Tubman in the Prince Hall Paradigm, and I thank you, my friend.
Yeah, really excellent, Bishop. I know everybody in the comments has been pleased to see you on video, so it's good to know that your recovery from the poisoning is well along. You're looking really great. And
thank you, my friend.
You said a lot of stuff today that I have never heard anything about before. It's truly amazing. So I want to thank you for joining me again. I want to remind everybody that they can listen to the Bishop on liferadionj.com/Gators. You can also hear it on 92.9 FM. You can subscribe to Bishop Gators' Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group on YouTube. We've got over 250 people watching the simulcast there right now. And of course, more than 800 watching on the various Crowdsource the Truth channels. So Bishop, your powerful voice is gaining new reach all the time, and people can become part of the global spiritual revolution by financially supporting you on paypal.me/GSRRmediagroup.com. They can help Crowdsource the Truth continue to bring everybody shows with the Bishop and everybody else that we have on by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Viewers are going to get access to a huge and constantly growing library of sponsor exclusive content. Don't miss tonight's show, More Pain with Mike Moore. We've got some exclusive excerpts from an upcoming interview with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Bishop, thank you so much. We'll be back next week with part 2, and we'll definitely get to questions then. But we've got to run right now. Thanks so much, Bishop, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks, Jason. We'll see you next week.